Thank you, Carmen. So what role can and should business play in promoting democracy? We're going to get an answer to that question in a video from Mathias Döpfner. He's CEO of Springer and the author of a new book called The Trade Trap: How to Stop Doing Business with Dictators.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to participate in the Democracy Conference in Copenhagen. Unfortunately, only via video. The reason is we have our annual leadership summit of Axel Springer, and I have to be there this year in Poland. It's a pleasure, although we are speaking in difficult times. The crisis of democracy, the decline of democracy is obvious and well documented over many years by Freedom House and other sources. We all know the numbers, I assume. The new situation shows a clear escalation. The war in Ukraine on the one hand, the war in Middle East on the other hand, and the threat of a potential third war, the takeover of Taiwan by China. What do these three terrible wars and conflicts have in common? The common goal is to weaken democracy, and the most important target are the United States of America, the biggest democracy in the world. But the next goal is also to further disentangle Europe and America and other democracies from each other. There are many reasons for that, and it's a complex matter, but I think one reason that is widely underestimated is the trade policy that we Western democracies, non-Western democracies, open societies have implemented over the last decades, particularly driven by a policy of the WTO that allowed that trade with non-democracies is not only possible, but it is even possible under asymmetric standards. So China is still considered in the WTO as a developing country, although it is meanwhile the second biggest economy in the world. And with this status of a developing country, it enjoys a lot of exemptions, privileges, and does not have to comply to rules that other members have to comply to. That is self-damaging, and it is weakening democracy. And you could now say, well, but business is unrelated to that, and a change through trade is a very positive side effect of trading with non-democracies in the manner that we do it today. The opposite is true. Change through trade has happened, but it has strengthened non-democracies. It has made autocratic systems even more autocratic and aggressive, based now on a stronger economy. And a very good example is Russia. The irresponsible energy policy of Germany over 2 decades led to a fact that the gas consumption of Germany from Russia went up from 33% to 65% in only 15 years. This is not a healthy trade relationship. This is dependency. This is particularly asymmetric dependency, and that has financed and strengthened the Putin that we have to deal with today. The billions from Europe, and particularly from Germany, almost on a daily basis have financed the Putin, who is now the aggressor, who is threatening democracy in Europe. And the same is true and will be true on an even bigger and larger scale with regard to China. The German car industry is already dependent from China. America's health system is dependent from Chinese components for antibiotics. Roughly 90% are based on China components. That is not a healthy trade relationship. It's dependency, and that leads to symptoms like the necessity for the CEO of Daimler to apologize a couple of years ago publicly twice for an advertising motive that quoted the Dalai Lama, an arch enemy of the Communist Party of China. So the CEO of one of the largest European car companies had to publicly apologize for a very harmless photo of the Dalai Lama that they used in order to secure further business relationships with China. That shows that there is a link between democracy and business, and that with this irresponsible trade policy, we are undermining our values and also our open society system in the long run. I think we are accelerating the decline and the crisis of democracy. That's why we need a new concept. And here is my concrete proposal. The proposal basically suggests that the WTO, as it is today, needs to cease operation. It's a dysfunctional bureaucratic colossus that is to the advantage of non-democracies and to the disadvantage of democracies. We have to go back to another model, to a more minimalistic model that is closer to what the old GATT, the old trade agreement launched in 1947, used to be, based on minimalistic standards, a strong incentive for democracies to do business with each other. And here I would suggest 3 criteria. Countries that accept the rule of law, that accept human rights, and that accept certain climate targets, CO2 emission targets. And in all 3 categories, if I'm saying comply to these criteria, I'm talking about very minimalistic criteria. So I'm not speaking about the perfect democracy. It's not only about Denmark and Switzerland that should do business with each other. So I also include even Brazil and India, although they are far away from being big democracies. But all democracies that comply to these minimalistic standards can do tariff-free business with each other. That's a huge incentive, like a very bold tax reform. It will shift value creation, jobs to democracies. These countries can still do business with countries that do not comply to these standards, but then in that case, high tariffs are implemented. And this is simply leading to a fairer ecosystem where the abuse of certain standards by non-democratic countries is limited, is less attractive, and at the same time, this incentive strengthens democratic economies and countries. It's the basis for a discussion. Unfortunately, I cannot participate in the discussion. And I know many arguments who will say, well, that's not realistic, it's not going to happen, and who should agree on that, and so on. It's complex, yes. But again, to just continue what we are doing, that's definitely not smart, that's not wise, that's not going to lead to a happy end. We have to think differently, we have to do something else. And here's my proposal. Looking forward to attend next year's conference in person and to continue our discussion. Thank you very much.